Let's get started. Go to File in Photoshop, New, and you'll notice the first thing you see is just the last different type canvases that have been opened on the computer. You may or may not see the same thing. Across the top you notice all the tabs here: photo, print, art, illustration, web, mobile, and so on. Click the film and video one and you'll find the HDTV 1080p 1920 by 1080. That works for me. That's the size of your actual TV that you're working on, so whatever you're working on can translate into your sequence in Premiere or in Edius. So have that highlighted, and you'll notice on the right there's preset details for each and every one, different options for each one. It'll kind of untitled there because it's just a boxed canvas in there, so you can name that if you want. My TV canvas, like a fancy artist. Alright, and then the width and all that other stuff there, orientation, you're working with landscape, resolution 72 is fine. If you want to work the print or if you want to make your own stickers, knock that up to 300. Color mode, RGB, background contents, and change this to transparent. Very simple there. Sometimes you might have to expand this box some because you have to scroll down to see those options. As you can see, you're not going to see very much on its own, so make sure this is big so you can see everything. Otherwise you have to scroll to find transparent. So hit transparent, hit create, and then you'll see the little checkerboard here. That just means empty space, nothing to worry about. And then along the left side here you see all the tools here. It's all set by default. And then across the top your standard file, edit, image, and so on. Those things do particular things. Well, we'll get to that. The move tool and so on will have a different set of options and tools. You can change modes and different options and the way these particular tools act, and we'll get to those soon. So let's do two things. Let's work with text and let's work with photos. And now I've brought this canvas in and I want to bring in a photo into the project, but I want to make sure that it's within this Photoshop project, because if you could just go and wildly open up photos from your computer into Photoshop, you're creating a canvas the size of that photo, and you want to work with the canvas that you're working with on your timeline. So now the right side's a whole other deal here. We're not going to show you the layers here yet, but let's bring in a couple of things. Let's bring in a picture. So bring it into picture into my project itself. You're going to go to File, Place Embedded, and then your option is going to come up. And I'm just going to do a picture of my wild son here, and select Place. And immediately it's going to show you just the bounding box here. That's the transform selection. It's going to give you a chance to resize. And across the top you'll see those options as well. This is the Commit To button, which you can also press the Enter button on the number pad. So let's just push OK and you'll see what happens here. And it's in this area where all your layers are going to live, much like your video and audio and everything. Everything's going to be stacked. So now that I've got them in here, I'm going to make sure this is selected, and I'll bring this down a little bit. And the keystroke is Control and T for Tom. And you want to just grab the corner, and then, as you know, you're going to bring that down. Now, it's kind of doing this wacky little thing here. It's going to destroy the picture some, that you don't want to make that too stretched out. So just use the magic Shift key, and when you hold down Shift and drag, it's going to keep the dimensions all together without having any problems. So if you kind of mess up there, it's just a matter of grabbing that Shift, and it's going to lock those properties and constrain the proportions of it. So let's bring this down a little bit like this, and I'm going to just drag it over kind of in the center there. That works for me, and I'm going to commit to it. So you can hit the check mark, or I can hit the Enter key on the number pad. So now that I've got my canvas set for TV, if I were to export this out of here as is, it's going to appear just like that on my timeline, even the location. Pretty cool, huh? So if I'm working with pictures, I want to make sure that I've got a copy of it. So on my Layers tab right here, where everything's going to live, I'm going to go right click, and I'm going to click Duplicate Layer. And it's going to ask me to name it. By default, it'll say Copy, no problem. Here you go. So now I've got two of them stacked right here. I might just hide that copy away. And then on the little representation icon here of your canvas, like a miniature version of it, it's going to have this icon here. And what that is it designates this image as a smart object, and it's kind of a protection mode, so you don't destroy this picture any more than you should. So for example, if I were to grab the little paintbrush here and try to mark it up, it's going to have this little symbol here, and it's going to give me a little fine little tone when I hit that. It says this smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. Edit contents will no longer be available. Rasterize the smart object? Question mark. You can hit OK, or I can show you how to actually do it, because when you learn this, you're going to know to do it. Right-click that, and then you can just find Rasterize Layer. So now I can mark this up, destroy it, do whatever I want. As you can see, I can, paint on it, or stamp on it, or erase. And if it wasn't rasterized, I wouldn't be able to do all that. It just stopped me in my tracks. So I did a few things there. How to get rid of all that? You can just Control Z. I think sometimes you can only do 2 steps, but with that one, you want to go to your history, and this bar right here. So now it's starting to make sense since I actually have something in there. So now it's going to show what I brought in, my canvas, and everything that I've done up to right now. So let's back it up so it's not as destroyed here. So now we're back to where we rasterized a layer. So we went back in time. So we can hide that. So the picture is there, good to go. So now let's work with this picture just a little bit. Now, an easy fix for the colors, so this might be okay. You might have a picture that's fine, or you might need a little bit of help. But when you're working with images, make sure that the one you're going to be manipulating is highlighted. Go over to Image and go to Adjustments, Levels, and then you'll see this Levels dialog box right here. Now this is something I learned in Photoshop 101 back in college. You're going to go to each channel and adjust each channel. Go to Red, and then see these little icons here that look like Hershey's Kisses. They're just sitting there on their own. You want to bring those in to where the color emerges, but this one's a pretty good in red, so let's check the greens. So I'm going to bring that Shadows, Midtones, Highlight tab. So the Highlight tab, I'm going to bring that in just to where that color appears. And then I'm going to go to the next color, Blue. I'm going to bring that over to right to the edge of the mountain. There, that's not bad. And then red, maybe there's a little bit red here. Let's bring the red in a little bit, maybe over here. The shadows. Oh, a little bit too green. So just use your eyes to adjust. So this one's red is pretty good. So we'll just leave that as is. So that's okay. So you kind of see it gotten a little bit brighter. The colors are better, but you can make anything look good. Very simple with that tool. So another problem people have is cutting things out. So let's cut him out a little bit from his hand and around his head. So there's a million ways to do the same exact thing. You're not wrong. You're just either going too slow or too choppy or too fast, but you want to have a happy medium. So you'll see this lasso tool here and the polygon lasso tool. You might find yours living amongst those, but I find my magnetic lasso tool, which I don't think I can move that up there yet, but the magnetic lasso tool, which typically lives around this menu here, is I think one of the best ones to cut things out, especially when your foreground and your background are completely different. So let's just start with the lasso tool here. So the icon shows like this. Follow along with me if you can. So I'm going to drag that over after I clicked once, and it's going to add these points here. And you notice it's going to start to grab that image or that piece. See, it's like a little magnetic strip there dropping down. And once it's working its way around, well, let's just work with his hand, for example. Let's go back around and keep following the line. And while I'm doing this, remember, keep your hand on the delete button, because then you can back up. If you don't like the points, I'm going to tap delete a few times and then just back it up. And I'm going to follow along the edge right here. And if it's not acting right, I'm going to hit the left mouse key to add one of those points and let it kind of do its magic. See how it kind of came out the side right there? You can back it up by deleting those dots. Riding that delete button. So keep following around the edge here. And then when it comes off, just kind of hang out the outside and it should work. So once you've gotten to the last point, the icon's going to change. See the little dot to the bottom right-hand corner of that icon? It activates. That's telling you that's at the last point. Click that once, and now you've got the marching ants going. So I've got his hand here selected, and then by default it's always going to select on the inside of the selection. So let's say I just want to delete the hand. I can just hit delete and it'll delete the hand. Once again, you got to work with a rasterized image or you will not be able to do that whatsoever. So now let's just keep his hand, and we want to do delete everything on the outside. Now there's a number of ways to do it. Like I said, I can grab the erase tool and erase it, or hit delete. Like I said, a million ways. So as it stands, if I were to hit delete, it's going to delete his hand. But I want to do the opposite. So let's Control Z that to bring his hand. Obviously, I did a couple other things there, so not to worry. That's what the history tool is all about. Go back one step, 2 steps for me, looks like. Magnetic lasso tool, and then those 2 edits or deletes that I did. I can go right back into time. Hide that when I'm done. So I want to select what's everything on the outside, because right now it's only focused on what's on the inside. So remember the tools across the top specifically for the select. So anything you selected, that's the select menu. So you can do a number of things. Know those shortcuts, they're going to help you. Find the inverse, which is the opposite, and it's going to select the opposite. So now if I were to hit delete, you won't delete his hand, you're going to delete everything else. You're going to delete his wild face. So now I've got just a hand. Good to go. So now at this point you can hit Control D to remove the selection, and I can move the object around anywhere I want. And let's say on the timeline I want it to be on the bottom left hand corner here, like that. He's holding a little tire, by the way. And then you go to File and then Export, or I'm sorry, Save As, and then tell it what it is, and then find PNG, which is my favorite. It works well with Edius and Premiere. Give it a name, PNG, and then working with my folder here, so I'm going to hit save, and then we'll ask you the PNG format options. Keep it large. Large is good, works well, and then you're good to go. So whatever you've used, whatever you save there, it's going to end up on your timeline just as it appears here, because that canvas is just like your TV sequence. So there is your cutout. Magnetic lasso, easy to do. So now let's work with text. Let's close out our little hand here and find the text tool. There's a capital T there. 2 things that'll happen. I can click and then I can create or type anywhere on the screen, or click and drag to create a box. There's my cursor up here, so let's do a test, another test, and a 3rd test. Alright, so the text is there. Let's enter to commit. Can't really see it, right? No problem. Make sure that text layer is selected. Grab your character tools, which is there, and by default would be the last one font that I used. Change the size by either clicking the drop down here and then selecting which one I want, or taking the icon and just clicking and dragging it over. There you go. A little bigger. Good. Let's change the color by double clicking the color swatch right here. Let's go with red. I like red. Okay. And you'll see all these other little tools here. Now, this is probably my most favorite one and has been quite popular. So you've written a script and you need some of your text to appear on your package, and you need it all caps. Just copy and paste. Bring your text tool in here and your box and paste it into the text box or layer. And then once you've got that selected, just like this here, grab this tool right here. See the double T? One click. Boom. Everything is in all caps. Now they are a little bit close there, so you grab this tool to change the spacing in between the letters and the lines. And this one's going to stretch the letters or bring them back down. So many other things you can do. Now, these are all the changes you can make to the text. Now, I encourage you to play around with them, especially some of these like faux bold and these numerical ones here. Like you can write 1ST, highlight it, and then click the superscript, and it'll change it up to look really nice there instead of highlighting the ST, changing the size, and then changing the baseline shift and where it all lives. So that's the easiest tool there, and strike throughs and underlines. Pretty simple stuff, but that is my favorite there. Automatic cap. Boom, simple. See? You may not type in all caps in your script, but then you bring it in, paste it into the layer, and then grab that special tool in the character palette. And if it's not living over here, again, go to Window, Character, and it'll show up right there on your toolbar. There. Alright, and then paragraph is behind it, orientation. So the next thing we want to do is kind of give this a little bit more character. So let's move it around a bit. Let's just put it kind of in the lower third area-ish. Alright, so our text is living there, and then you're going to right-click the layer once it's activated. Everything that's highlighted is activated. You're going to right-click there, and then click your blending options, which is the very first one you see on the right-click. And that gives you all these beautiful little tools here. So I want this to appear better on screen in terms of video or whatever, but just to make this stand out a little bit more, there's plenty of options to get you there. I encourage you to play around as much as possible, but I'm going to show you the basics. So here's the stroke, which is just a line around the text or an image or an object. And on the right, make sure this is double clicked because you want to get the options to change things. Will be the size. You can see the live changes on your text and this little preview box right here. And then the size, I like to go with just 1 pixel because it gives you a little bit of an edge right along the edges. And you can change the position. So right now it's on the inside, and watch the changes. There's the outside, center, put it on the outside, real nice. Blend mode, play around with those, change it up, but I like to stick with normal for now. Opacity, so if it's a little bit too much for you, you can always knock it back to like 70, just so it's kind of there, give it a little bit of definition. And then you can change the color of the stroke, and right now it's in black. You notice there's an extra stroke here. You can add as many strokes as you like in a variety of colors just by hitting that plus sign. So I can keep adding as many as I want. If they're highlighted, you can just hit the little triangle or the box right here and uncheck those. I think you can just delete them. Just like that. Highlight, trash can, highlight, trash can. Good. So you can add all these extra ones here. So anyone that has a plus sign next to it, you can add multiples. So there goes stroke. We got that nice line around the outside. Another thing we want to do is a drop shadow. A little kind of crazy there. Depends on your background. We'll bring it out. Especially if you got a white background, you want something to kind of bring it off the screen. Here's your drop shadow. Your blend mode, multiply looks like that. Normal is normal. Opacity, you can see the live changes on the left. You don't want it that 100% too harsh, but you can always just go like 50%. But your options are there. You can do just about anything. The angle of the shadow, try to match what you've got going on the screen. It's really subtle. There. The distance between the background and the foreground. Oh, it's flying off the screen there. Live changes there. Just a little bit. The spread. See how much bigger it gets. Real easy. Slide that back and forth. Good. And then the size. But it's all really subtle. Just very subtle amount of shadow you need. You don't need to go completely harsh. And then the color box right here, you can change the actual color of the shadow if you wanted to. Contour, it's just real simple stuff. You can change the way everything is, how the shadow is working, or it appears on there. There's a few different options in the drop down here. You can see the changes as they go. Kind of get you started. Let's keep it simple here. Little wave. All right. So that's drop, shadow, and stroke. So let's change the way the actual text looks. You can do a color overlay, changing the color if you wanted to. Gradient overlay. Some people like this one too. Make sure that's double clicked so you can actually manipulate the options here. You see the gradient box right here. Click that and you're going to get these little presets, and watch the live changes here. There's a variety of ways you can go about doing this by adding multiple colors to it. As you can see, the rainbow one here is kind of colorful, you know. So I'm just going to go with the basic black into white. This is black into clear. So it's going to be just like this. And you can adjust the right through here. See what it's doing to your gradient here. Since one side's clear, it's really hard to tell, but that's how you change all your options there. So if I went with a black and white, but I want to change the white, see what happens? Sliding that over. Just double click the little box and you can bring up the color picker. So I like red, or you know, maybe like an orange. You know, I don't know what you're going to use that for in your package, but you see that the options are there that you can make the text look a little bit more interesting. So let's just cancel that out, hide that. Plain color, bevel emboss. Oh man, it's going to make it look a little wild, but like I said, get back in here. You know where it is. Play around with it. It's a lot of fun. All right, so I'm good with that. I'm going to hit OK. And right now it's at a text, and then you want to export that. Save as PNG. Save it. Large. And then I can just drop it right in. Pretty simple. Drop it in your timeline. And it'll appear on the lower third as you see on your canvas. Pretty neat, huh? And you can turn off and on the effects, just to kind of help you have perspective. And you're like, I want all my text to look like that. Now this is where it gets easy. So go into blending options again, and everything that I've did to that text, I want to be able to use it later. And I've done a number of things, and you may or may not have remembered exactly what was on there. So go into styles, and we're going to create a new style. New style, and the box will appear here. Name it. So everything that I did in terms of what's checked off here will be in this style. So hit OK, and it's going to appear right there, the very last one. So all I have to do is, when I bring in another text layer and I go into layer style, go into blending options, go into styles, and it'll be listed here. And everything that I've just did for this is saved. So these are other options. You see how the changes almost immediate? There's so many different kinds here that just by default all there. I made a few along the way there, just really simple ones. Well, now it's going crazy. Has the none on there. Simple. So now it's always going to be living there. You can always go back to it. And this saves even your font style and everything. It's really fun. So now, no libraries. There you go. All right, and there goes text, and we've dealt with images earlier. Pretty simple stuff.